You've got 5 seconds to walk away, or I swear I'll have you fired, Veronica Lane snapped, her voice slicing through the candlelit silence like a dagger. I'm not asking for your job, Joel Carter replied, standing tall in his janitor uniform, a mop still dripping beside him. I'm asking to help you walk again. The absurdity of his words hung in the air, defying gravity, logic, and social rules. Veronica froze, her manicured fingers clenched around the stem of her untouched wineglass. You want to help me what? She whispered, equal parts amused and offended. Joel didn't blink. Walk, again. Her laughter was short, sharp, cruel. Oh, how charming. A man with bleach and floor wax now moonlights as a spinal expert? Her wheelchair creaked softly as she leaned back, armor wrapped in Chanel. Tell me, do mop handles double as miracle tools now? But Joel wasn't flustered. No, but I offer something your surgeons never did. Perspective. For a moment, her face flickered, something between surprise and fear, but she masked it instantly. You've got guts, she said coldly, but that won't get you through this velvet rope. I've been behind it for 8 months, he replied quietly, cleaning your floor, watching your reflection lie to itself. She reached for the call button. Don't. His voice softened. Just now, when I said walk, your left foot twitched. Reflexive. Real. Her finger froze midair. I'm not here to pity you, he added. Someone once saved me, and I see you hiding in that chair like I used to. Silence fell between them like a veil. Then he placed a small card on her table, name and number only. Call me when you're done pretending, and walked away. Now here's the question. Would you have called him? Let me know in the comments. Joel Carter didn't look back as he exited the candlelit sanctuary of La Lumiere. He'd learned long ago that truth lands better when left to echo in silence. Outside, the night was damp, streets glossed with rain and glinting under the gold shimmer of street lamps. He walked 2 blocks to his apartment, a 5th-floor walk-up with a broken buzzer and a door that stuck in the winter, and pushed it open to the warm scent of chamomile tea and peanut butter toast. You're late, a small voice called from the kitchen. Lila sat at the table, legs swinging beneath her chair, her tiny hands clutching a box of crayons. Got caught up talking to someone, Joel said, shrugging off his jacket. That lady again? She asked, eyes lifting. At 7, Lila had a radar for truth sharper than most adults. Joel didn't answer right away. She's complicated, he finally said, setting down his mug. Lila nodded solemnly. She looks like she forgot how to smile. Joel's breath caught. Yeah, he whispered, like Mommy used to. His fingers curled slowly around the chipped mug in his hand, the warmth failing to reach the cold spot in his chest. Maria, God, Maria. 4 years ago, she was vibrant, fierce, unstoppable, until the miscarriage shattered her spirit like glass underfoot. One day, she simply stopped walking. No injury, no diagnosis, just silence. The doctors called it conversion disorder. Psychological paralysis. We can't fix what we can't see, they told him. But Joel had refused to accept it. He'd read every journal, watched every therapy session, sat with her when the nights were too long and the sobs too deep, and slowly, painfully, Maria fought her way back, inch by inch, day by day. He still remembered the first time her foot moved, the sound of her cry when she realized it was hers, and when she stood, trembling but triumphant, she walked straight into the arms of Doctors Without Borders. Haiti. 6 months later, a landslide took her. Wrong place, wrong moment, gone in a heartbeat. But she didn't leave just grief behind. She left fire in Joel. A fire that refused to watch someone surrender to shadows without showing them the door. That's why he spoke to Veronica Lane. Not because she was rich or beautiful or broken in the usual way, but because behind her steel gaze and luxury armor, he saw a woman just like Maria once was, stuck between fear and possibility. That night, after Lila fell asleep holding her half-blind doll, Joel took out Maria's journal from the bookshelf, the cover worn from too many nights of reading it, just to remember her voice. He flipped to a page she once wrote during her recovery. You don't heal by running from the pain. You heal by holding it until it stops scaring you. Joel stared at the words, then looked out the window. Somewhere across the city, a woman was staring at a business card she didn't ask for. But maybe, just maybe, needed more than she knew. Veronica Lane stared at the plain white card on her nightstand like it was a bomb with no timer, harmless unless she dared to pick it up. 2 days passed, no calls, no appointments, just the memory of a janitor with eyes too calm and words too sharp still echoing in her head. On the third day, against every voice screaming in her mind, she summoned her assistant and requested a private session with the janitor named Joel Carter. The maitre d' nearly choked on his headset. An hour later, Joel stood once again before her, this time in her private sitting room, sunlit, modern, immaculate, and cold. "You asked for me," he said. "I have questions," she replied. Her tone was clipped, her arms folded, her posture perfect, as always. "What exactly qualifies you to offer this kind of guidance?" Joel didn't move. "Nothing official, just life." Her brow arched. "And I suppose your life gives you the authority to analyze mine?" "Not analyze," he said gently. "Just notice." She stared at him like he were a crack in her window threatening to spread. "Let's get one thing straight," she said, rolling slightly closer in her sleek black chair. "You don't touch me without permission. You don't pity me. And if I say stop, you stop." Joel nodded. "Fair." He unzipped a small duffel bag and pulled out some modest equipment, resistance bands, a towel, a hand mirror, and a leather-bound notebook worn soft at the edges. "What's that?" Veronica asked. Joel ran his hand across the cover. "My wife's journal. She tracked her recovery here. Every inch gained, every breakdown, every step back to herself. I thought maybe it would remind you that you're not alone." Veronica eyed the book like it might burn her. "She walked again?" "She did," he said quietly. "And then she walked into a jungle and never came back." Silence swelled between them. "Let's begin," she said abruptly, rolling to the mat on the floor. Joel guided her, slowly, gently, instructing her to close her eyes and breathe. "I didn't agree to meditation," she muttered. "No," he replied, kneeling beside her without touching. "But your body forgot what peace feels like. Breathing is how we remind it." She held his gaze for a long moment, then obeyed. The room settled into stillness. Joel watched the small things, tension around her jaw, the flex beneath her thumb, the way her legs flinched when the sun streamed across her knees. She was trying not to feel, but her body was speaking anyway. That night, Veronica sat alone in the same room long after he left. Her walls were lined with unread books and unopened memories. Something about the house felt less sterile now, like a single breath had stirred the dust of who she used to be. She reached for a bourbon, then changed her mind. "You're changing," she whispered to no one. And for the first time in years, that didn't terrify her. It simply felt like the beginning of something unfinished. The next morning, Veronica rolled into the sitting room dressed differently. No blazer, no heels, no armor, just a white t-shirt and loose yoga pants that made her look human again. Joel noticed but said nothing. She parked beside the mat and looked at him. "Let's skip the breathing today." "Fair," he nodded, setting down the journal. They moved through slow motions, mirror work, controlled toe flexes, small, unglamorous battles. "Why the mirror?" she asked, glancing at her own reflection like it was a stranger. "So you can see yourself healing," he replied. She held his gaze. "I hate mirrors." Joel nodded slowly. "Then maybe that's where we start." For a while they said nothing. Then out of nowhere she whispered, "You want to know what really happened?" He looked up gently. "Only if you want to tell me." She stared into the glass, her hands tightening on the arms of the wheelchair. "I didn't fall," she said, her voice flat but trembling. Joel didn't move. "I jumped." The silence that followed felt like a crack in the earth. "I didn't want to die," she clarified after a beat. "I just wanted him to see me, to stop looking at me like I was a piece of decor." "Your husband," Joel said softly. She nodded once, jaw clenched. "He loved the power, the company, the spotlight. But me? I was background, elegant, profitable, replaceable." Her voice wavered. "And when I jumped, he didn't even come to the hospital. He just sent flowers and a lawyer." Joel's hands rested quietly on his knees. "That's not your shame to carry. Try telling that to the voice in my head for the past 5 years, she muttered. He leaned in slightly, his tone steady but warm. Veronica, you didn't lose your legs. You surrendered them. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me? And that means, he said calmly, you can take them back. The sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water. She blinked hard but didn't look away. That night, something shifted. Veronica sat at her grand piano, polished, untouched for years. She hovered her hands over the keys, afraid to press, afraid it might hurt more to feel again. But slowly her fingers found a note, then another, and another. The melody that emerged was imperfect, trembling, barely there. But it filled the silence. She closed her eyes and remembered herself at 19, barefoot, laughing, surrounded by joy and noise and no one needing her to be perfect. Just alive. Just her. When the last note faded, she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just sat there, breathing into a space she had shut for too long. Upstairs, her phone buzzed with another board meeting invite. She ignored it. In this moment, she wasn't Veronica Lane, the mogul, the scandal, the tragedy. She was just a woman rediscovering the sound of her own heartbeat. And maybe, just maybe, that was where healing truly began. Not with movement, but with music. The park was quiet that morning, draped in a soft gray mist that turned every tree into a watercolor painting. Veronica sat near the duck pond beneath a crooked elm tree, bundled in a thick wool coat and leather gloves she didn't need, sunglasses masking eyes that hadn't slept much. She'd told her assistant she needed air, but what she didn't say was that she was hoping, foolishly, inexplicably, to see him. Then she heard it, a laugh loud and full and warm like summer. Joel. She didn't have to turn. She knew that voice now. It had been echoing in her head since the first session. He was jogging up the hill with a little girl bounding beside him, holding a worn-out doll with one button eye and pink yarn hair tied in a frayed ribbon. The girl saw Veronica first and ran straight up, fearless, curious. I know you, she said, bright and certain. Veronica blinked. Do you? You had dinner with Daddy at the fancy place, she beamed. Veronica smirked. Dinner? He was cleaning. But you talked, the girl insisted. That's dinner in my book. Joel caught up, out of breath, grinning. She doesn't usually talk to strangers, he said. I think Lucy vouched for you. He gestured to the doll. Veronica studied it, mismatched, ragged, clearly loved. What happened to her? She's been through stuff, the girl said, shrugging. Why not get a new one? Veronica asked. The girl's frown was sharp and instant. Because this one knows my secrets. That answer knocked the breath out of her. She stared at the doll, then at the child. May I? The girl nodded solemnly and handed Lucy over. Veronica cradled it gently like it might fall apart in her hands. You fixed her, she said softly, noticing the stitched belly, the patched ear. I didn't want her to feel left out just because she's broken, the girl replied. Broken things are still people. Veronica's chest tightened. Who told you that? Mommy used to. Joel froze behind her. His eyes welled, but he didn't say a word. The girl held out a hand. Do you want her to keep you company for a while? Veronica blinked, her heart aching in places she didn't know still existed. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, the girl said with a smile. Lucy doesn't talk much either. Veronica laughed quietly, the sound catching in her throat like a first breath after drowning. Later, after the ducks had been fed and Lucy returned to her rightful owner, Joel sat beside her on the bench. They didn't speak for a long time. Then she whispered, She's extraordinary. She takes after her mom, he said. Veronica looked down at her gloved hands. I haven't felt like a person in years, she confessed. More like a glass exhibit, polished, admired, untouchable, but not unbreakable. Joel turned toward her, voice steady. Maybe you've just been paused, not paralyzed. That night, she placed a note on her mirror, Don't give up on me. Not yet. 3 days passed before Veronica spoke to anyone again. The message had come without a name, just a number, just venom. You think this makes you a hero? You're still a fraud. It echoed in her mind like a curse she couldn't shake, confirming the fear she'd been too proud to voice, that no matter how hard she tried, some people would never let her outrun her past. She didn't show up for her next session, or the one after that. But on the third morning, Joel rang the bell and waited. When no one answered, he didn't leave. He waited longer. Finally, the door opened a crack, and Veronica stood there, pale, eyes hollow, robe hanging loosely around shoulders that looked far too fragile for a woman once nicknamed the Ice Empress. Her voice was barely a breath. "Why are you here?" Joel's answer came without pause. "Because I didn't come this far just to be another chapter in your before and after story." She flinched. "I'm done," she said, turning away. "Why?" he asked gently. She stopped but didn't turn. "Because I'm terrified it won't matter." Joel stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. "You're afraid of the wrong thing," he said. "You're afraid of not mattering. But what you should fear is never trying again." Her lip trembled. "They don't know what I've lived through." "Then show them," he said. 2 days later, she did. The annual gala for the Spinal Injury Research Fund shimmered under chandeliers and glass, a parade of silk dresses and hollow applause. Veronica arrived fashionably late, wheeled in by her assistant, hair swept high, navy gown hugging her frame like armor made of satin. The room hushed. At the podium, her assistant reached for the microphone, but Veronica held up a hand. "No," she said firmly. "I'll walk." There was a gasp. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair, and slowly, with the steadiness of someone who knew the cost of every step, she stood. The silence in the ballroom was thick enough to crack. One step, another. Her heels clicked softly against marble, each sound louder than the last. And then she reached the podium, trembling but upright. She looked out into a sea of eyes, all wide with disbelief. "For 5 years," she began, "I wore silence like it was strength. I dressed it in diamonds and sold it as dignity. But it almost killed me. I didn't sit in that chair because I had to. I sat because I believed trying again would hurt more than surrendering." She paused, gaze sweeping the crowd. "Tonight I stand not because I'm healed, but because I'm finally brave enough to feel." A beat of stillness, then thunder. Applause rose like a wave crashing against glass. But she wasn't listening. Her eyes found Joel in the back of the room, standing beside Lila, who beamed with pride. And in that moment, Veronica smiled. Not for the cameras, not for the donors, but for herself. Finally, she had chosen to try. The sun was soft that morning, spilling over the terrace of Veronica's townhouse like it had waited 5 years for permission to enter. Inside, she stood barefoot beside the mat. No assistant, no chauffeur, no silk facade. Just Veronica Lane, steady on her feet, hair pulled into a messy bun, face fresh and unpainted, waiting for Joel. When he entered, she didn't greet him. She simply said, "I dreamt I was walking and nobody noticed." But one hand reached out, not to cheer, just to hold. "It was you." Joel said nothing, only nodded. That session, she didn't just move, she fought. Her muscles trembled, her breath hitched, but she pushed anyway. And when he whispered, "You're not a fraud," her tears came. Not from weakness, but release. Later that afternoon, they walked the quiet halls of the Beacon Center, a place they built together on belief in second chances. In one room, a teen girl in a neck brace smiled at her own reflection. In another, a father held his son's hand during a therapy session. And beneath a mural of a little girl helping a woman rise from a chair, Veronica placed a plaque that read, "Healing isn't about going back. It's about becoming who you were meant to be." That evening, she stood alone on the balcony, overlooking the city she once ruled and feared. Joel joined her, handing her a warm mug. "Nice speech," he said. "I winged it," she replied with a grin. They stood in silence, wind rustling her cardigan like a whispered promise. Then she turned to him, eyes soft. "You know what the scariest part of all this is?" "What?" "That after all the pain, all the trying," she paused, voice barely a whisper. "It worked." Joel looked at her for a long moment. "You mean, you worked?" She reached for his hand and leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm tired of standing alone." He didn't speak, just wrapped his arm around her, steady and strong. And in that stillness, beneath fading clouds and rising stars, she whispered the final truth. "It wasn't a miracle. It was love." What does healing mean to you? Have you ever found light in the most unexpected place? Share your story below. We're listening.